Yeah, for Seattle, see conversation about Carolina taking a quarterback in the top 10.
So I was talking to Rob Statton, who, if you're a Seahawks fan, you don't follow Rob, then you're absolutely missing out. But he's a great draft guy, great Seahawks guy. We were talking the other day, and he was saying that the noise out of Seattle is absolutely they're not going to take a quarterback, and that the whole kind of Drew Lock drumbeat for Drew is kind of a real thing, at least for a season. That they're going to roll with Drew Lock certainly in the first round, and talking about Stingley as an absolute possibility, and it comes back to that medical. But it feels like Derek Stingley in Seattle would be a good fit, a prime fit, and feels like 10. You're buying the 2019 season essentially because of the injury, because of the down form from from last year. But you go back in 2019, and people around the LSU organization talking about those one-on-one battles that he was having with Jamar Chase and things in practice, and going up against that Alabama receiving core as he did famously in that big game that finished 44-36 or whatever it was, the Burrow Tua battle. He looks a terrific prospect. So that to me seems like a really good fit, Derek Stingley in Seattle at that point.
I like that one. Kyle Hamilton is the guy I want there if I'm them.
Wow.
If I can get him and Quandre Diggs together. Well, what they did last year in Seattle is so interesting. They just completely ditched all of the Pete Carroll doctrine. For years, everyone thought they could plug and play in what Pete Carroll was. They moved to a 5-down bare front. They moved in the secondary by percentage per PFF's tracking more than any secondary in the league for the last 3 years. That's more than you see with Vance Joseph doing. That's more than you see with Todd Bowles. They moved more than anyone pre to post snap, which never happened before for Pete Carroll. It was a static defense. They played 4 down, they played 3 deep, and everyone knew what they were running, and they just had better players than you. So they've completely shifted. So if you can say to him, we've said before about where you would take one of those off-ball players in that top thing. I actually like their front. I think it's pretty good. They've certainly got some oomph. They could do with a genuine pass rusher, but if they're playing so much bear and they're bringing so much heat, it's not as essential. If you can have Diggs and Hamilton who can play any position, Diggs is one of the finest free safeties in the league, and they can move and rotate, and you can put them in different spots and really disguise coverage. That is about as saucy as a 1-2 partnership gets when you're just looking at who you could plug from the draft into a team now.
The other interesting question, I suppose, will be, depending on what they do with Dwayne Brown, who's still out there in terms of free agency, do they bring Brown back, or is there a tackle that falls down to that point where they just can't pass them up? Who does Cross fall, for example? Does Cross get to that pick, and they find that hard to pass up? I love Charles Cross. To me, he's the best tackle in the draft. So I think it will be very interesting to see what they do, and they could go again. Jermaine Johnson, is John? We talked about it on the main podcast. Does the Thibodeau fall end up at Seattle, and they just not potentially the ideal scheme fit, but just somebody that they just can't pass up on the value in terms of what he's able to do and get around the edge and get to quarterbacks? And it will be interesting to see. And you kind of wonder, is this this feels like close to the last hurrah for John Schneider and for Pete Carroll. So how much of a bang do they go out? They're 4 or 5 picks in the top 100, so lots for Seattle to do, but lots of opportunity for them to do it.